Hello and welcome to Dragons,
Unicorns,
and
Other Creative Creatures.
I'm Dr. Kevin.
And I'm Rona Gofstein.
I don't know where to look. We switched places. I'm just going to turn you like this. I'm like,
we're going to switch? Okay. We'll switch. Wasn't that the name of a movie?
Switch, yes. Not a
Switch.
very good one.
No, but we're better than that.
That's true. We are better than that.
So, hey. For those of you who are wondering, you notice that the set is different. If you haven't been watching any of the shows this month.
Shame on you.
Shame on you. Yes, well, that's beside the point. The point is that this is National Poetry Month. April is National Poetry Month. And 3 of our 4 shows this month are about poetry. And we have done one that we did a tribute to my aunt poet, the poet.
Yes.
And today we're being joined by 2 authors who we've had on for their...
Talked mostly about their longer works. Yes.
Their longer works. And the 3 of us are all going to be sharing poetry. Well,
I observe.
Moderate. The
moderate.
word is moderate.
I'm going to moderate this poetry slam.
Yes.
Poetry is a contact sport.
Poetry is a contact sport. And so we're going to talk about our life as poets, share some poetry, and maybe even discuss the poetry.
And poets, and just as you did in your tribute to your aunt, poems also those by others who have inspired and made you think, I think I like this medium. Let me try it.
So we're going to get right into talking about the poets that are
excellent.
So I'm going to introduce the first poet. I'll have you introduce the second one. And since we didn't do a write-up for me, I'll introduce myself from the poet perspective.
There you go.
How's that? Trisha J. Wooldrige writes grown-up horror, short stories, and weird poetry. Some even winning awards. So now, did you win awards for being weird or for poetry? Oh, her recent publication, both. No, her recent publication includes stories and poems in gothic fantasy, supernatural horror, dark luminous wings, and wicked haunted. It is New England after all.
Of course. Yes.
Which came out this past October from the New England Horrors writers when she writes as child-friendly T.J. Wooldridge. She's publishing 3 scary children's novels and a poem in the Jimmy Fund charity anthology, Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep. She's also past president of the Broad Universe.
Yay. And the first time I ever met Trish was actually, she was reading one of her pieces of poetry.
Oh, there you
It was
go.
a dark, creepy thing. It was awesome. Also with us again today is L.J. Cohen, who's a Boston area novelist, poet, blogger, ceramic artist, geek, and relentless optimist. And having spent time with her, I can tell you it's true. She is wonderfully optimistic. After almost 25 years as a physical therapist specializing in chronic pain management, L.J. now just tortures her characters. She now uses her anatomical knowledge and myriad of clinical skills to injure characters, and see, I was right, in her science fiction and fantasy novels. When not bringing home strays, both canine and human, LJ can be found writing, which looks a lot like daydreaming.
And then Kevin Ross Emery began writing poetry as a young teenager. And had started winning awards for his poetry by the age of 17.
Ooh.
Is it weird to talk about yourself in third person?
Yeah, but I'm trying to follow the format. Winning his first award when he was 17.
He went on to
win Poet of the Year award in a national poetry contest when he was 22. And at 30, received a Lifetime Achievement Award for his poetry.
Most recently, he can be... I'm kind of going with the format. This is the Mad Libs bio.
He currently has 4 books of poetry out, and has 8 in the wings that will be published whenever it's decided it's most gratuitous.
There you go.
I think we did. Didn't we do that once for a Broad Universe rapid fire reading? We did Mad Lib bios. If you didn't say
Yes, we did. We did.
Broad Universe,
wonderful.
which is this wonderful organization that LJ and Trish and I all belong to. We do at various sci-fi conferences something called rapid fire readings, RFRs. And the authors participating need to send us bios in advance so the person moderating can read them. Well, occasionally we don't get what we need. So we've done Mad Libs versions. So I will, give me an adjective, give me a noun, and then we read your bio. And they come out kind of,
Yes.
Interesting.
they're really actually quite awesome.
There was both an Aresia and a Dragon Con where I did that.
I was at the Aresia, that one.
Yeah.
That was
That's
great.
the one I remember.
Yeah.
It was fabulous. It was terrible, but it was fabulous.
Then I think we did a contest to see who could guess who the bios belonged to.
Now that would be fun.
When she's
That
not
would be
reading,
fun.
she's blowing up cars and doing stunt work for Michael Bay film. It just came out with, it was ridiculous and wonderful.
Well, you should have used all non-gendered pronouns, and then that really would have made it more confused.
Although at Broad Universe, it almost doesn't matter, really.
I guess I'm not enough of a broad to belong. huh?
Well, no comment. We actually do. We have male members.
do have men- yes, we
because
do.
The purpose of Broad Universe is not to be female or female identified. It is to support, encourage, and promote women in or women identified writers in speculative fiction, and men can certainly promote and celebrate women in speculative fiction.
Yes.
Did you hear there's a movie coming out about our matron saint?
Yes, there
Yes,
is. It looks
yes.
awesome.
What?
Mary Shelley,
Shelley.
Yep.
who wrote
Ooh.
the first speculative fiction piece
Yes.
of speculative fiction. There is a movie coming out. That is how it's titled, Mary Shelley with Dakota Fanning. So
Yeah.
we should do a fundraiser or a night out or something.
I like Dakota Fanning too. That
I
makes
do
me
too.
happy.
She does good stuff. And
Yes.
she does period pieces. So.
Yeah.
Mary Shelley was a fascinating character.
Yes.
So you see her
Yes.
relationship with her husband and the other men in her life.
Yeah.
All of whom played very interesting. It appears, because I don't really know her story very well, all appear to have played very interesting roles in
Yeah.
her creation and her choice of
Yeah.
what she writes, which is a lot about what we're going to
Yeah.
discuss today. Why we write, why you guys write poetry? Because I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, I have,
But yeah.
but I don't.
So, LJ, let's start with you. How has poetry played into your life? Is it something? Tell us your poetry history or what
Oh,
poetry
Lordy.
means to you.
And do it in a iambic pentameter. No, please don't.
I've
even say
been
that.
reading and writing poetry for a really long time. One of the first books that I remember getting as a young child was A. Milne's Now We Are Six, which was
I did, that's
poetry,
right.
all
It
full of
was.
poetry. And I read that book, till it was tattered. I mean, the cover fell out, the pages were tattered. And I really like the cadence and rhythm of language, I always have. And I started writing poetry as a very young kid. So, in elementary school, you'd get vocabulary words. So I couldn't just write sentences because I was that kid. I wrote either little poems or short stories that had those words
I feel like
in
we've had
them.
a lot of those kids
I'm
on the show.
I'm sure all of my
Yes.
teachers rolled their collective eyes at my homework. But so I've been writing poetry pretty much my whole life. I wrote poetry long before I wrote anything longer form. And for me, I don't know what I am feeling until I work it out in a poem.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
It's like a kind of an external processing.
Yes,
Yep.
absolutely.
Yeah, I'm a journaler, and that's where mine goes. And,
Yeah.
and you're nodding your head vigorously with that.
Actually, so I'm currently doing a read a poem live a day on Facebook Live for National Poetry Month. And last Sunday, I went, not yesterday, but the Sunday before, I did a talk. And one of the things that I discovered that poetry does is it allows me to explore the things that I feel are the most complex that I don't have an easy answer for. So growing up, I was the picked on kid. So it was all about emotions about wanting to do well and wanting to be cared, but also hating everybody because they're all evil. It's complicated. And then romance, I had horrible issues with, people coming up to me doing the whole pretend they like you and then tell you you're ugly. So that got worked in. So I knew I was going to be this next songwriter for New Kids on the Block. So clearly that did not happen. But
Their loss.
yeah. But then as I got to college and I started dealing with a lot of issues with my faith. So I was one of the few Catholics who grew up in a very positive, liberal, welcoming home and church. Like I was in college and I hung out with the feminist nun who ran the Catholic organization. She's like telling me, look, Jesus had the most intelligent conversations with women. Let me show you. So I had like all this positive, and then afterwards I went to like I guess a more usual church where there wasn't that much love and positivity. So I had to deal with that feeling of betrayal and looking at all the things that I knew were wrong with the church. And it was a very complicated feeling because there was a lot of love that I came from, but also so much hate and so much wrongness, particularly with what they did with the priests, moving them around,
Right.
how they talk about birth control, how they talk about gay and bisexuality, and all of that just it's a betrayal because there was so much that I loved. So I have a whole string of poems dealing with my complicated relationship with religion. And then I went on I call it my witch tour, where I left.
Because where else do you go after the Catholic Church?
I had every single New Age and witch shop in like central Massachusetts with my sister-in-law who had lost her job at the time, and I had quit my job at the time, and we had a summer together, and it was our witchy summer. So I started working in other bits of faith that I started studying and trying to learn more about other faiths. So I worked all that in to those poems. And then I also have a complicated relationship with feminism because there's a lot of issues in feminism that's wonderful, and I believe in the core of equality
Absolutely.
and empowerment. But it's also made up of humans,
Go figure.
and humans are complicated.
Messy. We're
Yes.
Messy. Life's messy.
So yeah, and do that, and then looking back on fantasy, I grew up with idealistic fantasies, and then I look back, I'm like, oh, that's all white men, and they're all straight.
Getting complicated again.
Yeah, and so fantasy started getting complicated, and then I started looking at like the normal everyday things and looking at the beauty in those, because that's also complicated, looking at like simple things and finding how much meaning you can get in those. So playing with the stuff that I feel is complex and needs to be explored, and finding a way to define those is where I play with poetry.
And I noticed you were nodding along a lot with that one, the complex and the
The
beautiful.
complex and the simple.
And the beautiful.
I tend to write poetry of the very specific. So it's, when my kids were little, a lot of my journaling was in poetry, and a lot of the poetry came from walking to the park with the dog and my son and the questions he would ask me, and they would get folded into a poem, and then it would end up being about something much more profound than that small moment. But I think you can explore the cosmic in the very specific.
Yes.
And the way poetry kind of works on those layers, from the very simple and the very concrete to the very complex and abstract, that's the power, I think, of poetry.
I think we've seen that in
Yes.
your work quite a bit.
Yeah, and I fell in love with words in like the second grade, second grade, and there was the running thing that I wrote a love letter to my second grade teacher who was like in her 60s, but it really was a poem without me realizing that I was writing poetry. I mean, like she was my radiant butterfly.
Oh,
And all of this stuff, and by hitting puberty in sixth grade, I had a fabulous English teacher who went around
God
and said,
bless
"What
all of
does
those."
and did the language arts and said, everybody, what do you want to? Do you have any idea what you want to do when you grow up?" And in sixth grade, I looked at her and said, "I want to be a writer."
yeah.
And so she started giving me special vocabulary assignments. She started teaching me how to diagram sentences. She encouraged me to write poetry and short stories.
Nice.
So here,
Blessings upon every teacher who did that. and
Yes.
The ones who didn't say, no, that's a bad idea, you'll starve. Or some version of that.
yeah, and she was. I mean, I actually graduated quote unquote the sixth grade with like a third level year college vocabulary. So I had all of those words. And so my love has always been for words, and poetry is the way to say the most with the least.
Yes, yes.
So I teach a lot of poetry seminars in elementary school, and I particularly love working in 4th, 5th, 6th grade.
Yep.
Because these are kids that have the facility with language, but they're not so self-conscious that they won't take a risk and be creative.
Yep.
So they're,
Oh, that's a good point.
and I tell them that poetry is the orange juice concentrate of language. You ever take a scoop of frozen
Oh,
orange
yeah,
juice
that's
concentrate?
intense.
It's all the pow and none of the water.
Yeah.
And they get it. Like, they so get that. And then they write these incredible pieces of poetry.
And I've kind of look at it as, and one of the things, and I think this probably comes from being psychic and empathic and stuff like this, is I can look and say, I wrote this poem for my emotions. I wrote this poem for somebody else's emotions who couldn't express them.
Yes.
Yes.
And when you're dealing with a poet, or somebody who's really has a poetry calling, so to speak, is I remember writing a poem for a woman who lost a child that was pregnant and lost the child, and writing this whole poem of what it felt like for her to
Yep.
not have this child in her body and to have never met this child, but yet this child existed, and wrote this whole thing. I think I was like 16, but I could feel
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
her. And I think that you're gonna, if you scrape almost any poet, you're gonna find an empath.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Agree.
So it's all about, it's either your own emotions, somebody else's emotions, or the emotions that come up with you by nature or an experience.
Yeah.
I don't know about either one of you, but I've definitely played with some political poetry.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
There you
Yes.
go. Yep.
It will be interesting to see the poetry that comes out of the current
Oh, yeah.
2 years, and I don't just mean the Washington D.C. political
Right.
climate, but the Me Too, new own voices,
Yes. Yeah.
and some of these things that are happening as well. I'm hopefully,
I've actually noticed that the poetry I've written over the past year to year and a half has been much more raw than the poetry I have written up until then, to the point where I'm not even sure they're not finished work yet. They're too raw, and I'm having trouble going back and editing them because of that.
Yeah.
That's a very interesting thing, and I'm going to ask Trisha this question in a second, but because you and I have had this conversation.
we have. I know where you're going. Yep.
Some of, because some of the poetry I'm going to be sharing today goes all the way from the 70s to today. And there is such a thing as a poem that I feel like is not finished.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I will not edit a piece that I wrote that ever hit the finished, because I feel like it's a bookmarker of my life and
Right.
who I was in that moment.
Right. It was true at that moment.
Yeah, and I don't want
Right, if you
to.
edit it now, it's not. You take
Yeah.
the truth away, or you're distant from it, or you're.
Yeah.
It depends on the poem, I think, because there's some poems. I'm gonna do a call out to Jane Yolen. She does a poem a day, and she admits some of these poems are in the works and raw, and she will go back and re-edit them later, and she shares that with people, and sometimes what's true then isn't true anymore for someone, and she's like, I want this poem to be true now. And there's also the part of wanting to submit poetry and maybe make some money as well. I mean, I very much believe there's certain poems that are written for me, but I'm also a fan of publishing as well. So I've had poems, and what I do with a poem is similar to what I do with prose. I do a save as, and sometimes I'll rename it. So sometimes I'll keep a poem like as it is for that point, and then I will rename it and change a few things. I have a couple poems that I've done that with just this year. One was, both are dealing with teaching your daughter to defend herself and using guns and where violence is. And that's adjusted. So I have, There Will Always Be Evil is like the early version. And then the more recent version is Before We Cross to Utopia. And the title makes a difference on how you read the poem as well.
Sure.
And there's not really a lot of word choices, but when it comes to a poem, one word can make
all
a huge
the difference.
So,
And I've mentored poets before and done some teaching as well. And, one of the very first things that I say to poets, the people that want to work with me, if they're looking for a mentor or whatever, is anything they've written, I actually read it to them because I go, poetry was written to be read.
Yes.
You
Yes.
need to hear
Yep.
how what you put down on the
Yes.
paper sounds when it's read.
Oh,
And
yes.
then that's how we edit it to say,
Yeah.
is this the message? But like with you, if I find a poem and I go, God, I don't feel like that anymore, my tendency is I may take a line up, but I write a different poem and I give it a different name, and and now it's another piece in the evolution. And again, there's no right or wrong here. I don't want to lose 21-year-old Kevin. I don't want
Right.
to lose 17-year-old Kevin. I don't want to lose 33-year-old Kevin.
Or 6-year-old. I mean, all of you
Yeah.
have stuff from when you
that's
were
why I say
quite
save
young.
as is like the best thing
Yep.
ever.
Yep.
I still have notebooks going
That
back
might actually be an
decades.
interesting collection.
Oh, yeah.
The poem as it was first written, and as it was saved as, and as it was saved as, and as it
There
was.
are some poems that emerge and they're almost a complete whole that need nothing. And there are other poems that emerge and they're a ragged mess on the page and they get worked over and worked over and worked
Yes.
over. And I don't know the rhyme or reason for one versus the
Right.
other.
Well, I know one of the things that happens to me is sometimes I will do that really like emotional vomit.
Yes.
Yep.
And there's the
Yeah.
vomit, and then I start pushing it around, and the act of writing the poem and playing with it transforms me,
Yes.
gives me
Yes.
clarity.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yes.
Absolutely. That's exactly it.
Yes.
I hope you guys do. I'm having so much fun watching this.
So it's our processing
Yes.
tool.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so I want to see if this happened to either one of you. At some point, and it had to have been about 10 years ago, I was writing a poem, and I write it, and suddenly I hear it being sung in my head, and it now has become a song. And I have like a dozen songs now that I've written that all started in my head as a poem, but as soon as it started coming, I heard it. Now, I don't write
Bob
music.
Dylan has a Nobel Prize for poetry or
Yeah.
Yeah.
literature because his songs.
If there seems to be any interrupt in the thing, it's because I got so excited and gesticulated so wildly, I killed my mic. Speaking of which, how many times have you killed yourself in a poem?
Oh.
I
Holy
don't
goodness.
think I've killed myself in a poem ever.
I've killed other people in poems.
I've heard those. You've killed yourself in your poems, Kim?
Well, I say
Guess. Like,
go through a death process in my poem.
Yes.
And so you go
Yes.
through a death
Yeah.
process in
Yes.
your
Oh, okay.
poetry.
yeah. Where you're so drained. Well, I've written poems where I'm so drained and I've put everything into it that I literally need a down day where I do nothing to recover from writing a poem.
I've written poems, particularly when my mother was dying. That year, I kept a paper journal, and I wrote a lot of poetry that I have not ever gone back to read.
See, I have one of those. I've read it like once or twice, but it was a poem when my father was dying and I was taking care of him. I was living with him. And my father, Papa, was a brilliant man, and he was losing his mind at the end of it. And my discussion with who was the stranger, I still cannot read that poem without like crying. I
But
can't
that's
get through it.
important. I mean,
Yeah.
and it's such an
Yeah.
interesting point. I can't say as a novelist or that I've written a short story ever that I don't think I could go back. I know I've written journal entries that I am not willing to go
Yes.
back and read again, or I'm not ready to go back and read again.
See,
But-
I kind of classify in my mind, there's poetry with a capital P and there's poetry with a small p. And for me, the poetry with the small p is my journaling.
Yeah.
The poetry with the capital P are poems that I think are works of art, and I'm going to craft them until they shine and then can be published or shared. The small p poems are for me,
Yeah.
and they're purely, sometimes one moves from one category to the other, but in general, that's really how I look at it.
One of the things I always look at is that and this is one of the things I say to any students I work with, is that poetry, you know a poem is successful if the listener felt something.
Yes.
They may not feel what you felt, but if they felt something, if you
Yeah.
got an emotion, that poem was successful.
It's all about the resonance.
And
Yeah.
and so I tend to look at any piece, like at some point I'm going to go back and I'm going to polish this piece that I wrote about my father and the stranger sitting there, only because I know there are people out there that don't have the words, that are dealing with this issue,
Yes.
that this will be cathartic for them.
And that's important because you know you're going through something, and when you think you're the only one, it's worse. And you talked about some of the issues
Yes.
in childhood and stuff that you've put into poetry. And, if even one person can go, oh, that's part of what I was feeling, or that starts what I was feeling,
Yeah.
that taps into what I was feeling. And it goes back to us what we just said about the poetry that may come out of these current times
Yeah.
will be interesting. Because there are a lot of people who can't I can't even imagine not being able to articulate what I'm thinking in words.
I think what you said earlier, I want to go back to some of my feminist poems and do because I have changed on some things and I've learned more. And I want to do like before Me Too, after Me Too, or like then and now, because I've changed. Some of them are like 20 some odd years old.
She wrote them when she was 4.
Yeah, that's it. And I'm like, and I've changed. What I've seen has changed. So
You should call the collection Me and Mini Me.
It is, but it's also, and you mentioned the hashtag. It's me and me too,
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, me too, yeah.
because when you wrote it, the voice was alone, and it was alone for you. And now there are a lot of voices out there, being heard, trying to be heard, wanting to be heard, and how will
Yeah.
you add yours to that potentially?
So should we start reading some poetry?
sure.
It's really
Okay.
poetry, people.
Mine's the first one up. I'm going to read one, and then if there's any discussion, we'll have it, and then we'll see what the next one. I have no idea what the order is, so
Surprise.
we're just going to go with it.
Okay.
But physically, if you cannot touch me but physically, then do not touch me at all. Though my body may respond, my mind will hate you for leaving it behind.
Ooh,
I like that.
I like that a lot.
And I wrote that as a 21-year-old male.
So you knew what you needed
Yep.
even
Yeah.
then.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think that at this point, looking back, I think that we're seeing a generation of males come in that would now resonate to that, where
Yeah.
there was almost no resonance.
Yes.
I had so many
Yeah.
of my female friends that
Yes,
wanted
we would
copies
resonate.
at that point.
Yes.
Yeah.
Put it on the refrigerator, would give it to their boyfriends, stuff like this. Any
Yeah.
of my guy friends were like,
Huh? I don't get it.
Yeah, would a guy give that potentially to a woman and say, "Here, I need you to do
Yeah.
this."
and I
Yeah.
think that is. So we have, so I don't. it
That's
doesn't-
mine.
That's
Yes,
yours.
yes.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So this is one of the few humorous poems that I've written. I have a lot.
I had fun when I was reading it as I was creating these for you guys, and I was like, "Is that what I?" Yes, it is.
Yes, and okay, so I have a bunch of medical issues, so bathrooms are very important to me. And having a clean bathroom, like I literally scope out everywhere I go to find out the bathrooms. And I've had so many disappointments, and I've been so betrayed by other women because I know it's a woman thing specifically to really need a clean bathroom. But I wrote this as part of my like simple things in life, it's fun. It's called TP Angel. So rarely do I pray so hard, an Ouroboros of traffic, 3 hours, no rest, an empty water bottle and travel mug too, to make it in time, to find the empty stall, to find it clean and with toilet paper. Too many sisters, so rude, so cruel, so careless. It's such a simple thing, a base thing, a dirty thought. Yet I am no less grateful than if granted world peace when I reach for that fresh, clean roll.
Yes. But see, that's what I
all
mean
had
about
those rest stop moments. We're like,
But that's what I mean about the poetry of the very specific
Yes.
being something much, much bigger than that.
it is. I mean, think about it. This is very specific and yet very unifying.
Yes.
Yeah.
As you said, very, very, very universal. That was the right
Yeah.
adjective.
So,
How old were you? How long ago did you write that? Do you know?
2 years, that's it.
Oh, this was-
That's
this
a
was
fairly
recent.
recent one. Yeah, I went on so I go on poetry binges. And so I did a bunch of simple pleasures in life poems all at once. And that was one of them. And it was probably after I'd had some very
Bad
sad
experience.
bathroom.
Yeah, I'm one of those women. I live with 3 men, and I have to say, I never understand how, when there's only a 50-50 shot of having the toilet paper go in what I consider the right direction, how they always have it wrong.
Oh, they always have it incorrect for you.
Incorrect for absolutely
Yes.
for women,
Incorrect for
what
you.
most women would consider. Although I have had one woman say, "No, if you have a cat that does this, you need it in the other direction." I'm like, "Okay, that's reasonable. I understand that." But
Yeah, I think it is. It's relieving. Relieving is the only word I can think of when I say it, Trisha. I think it's relieving
Yeah.
when somebody who has a frustration and they don't think that they get it, and then they read something like, oh my God, thank God somebody figured out how to say it in a way that I can actually get my point across humorously,
Yes.
but still get my point across.
yes, that there is this pain. It's
Yes.
real.
And there's a betrayal because other women, you know what it's like when you were running and you have to go.
Right.
And you
Is it
go into
so
that-
much to ask
Is
for?
it too much to answer? Exactly. We'll do a whole show on just the simple
Simple
pleasures.
pleasures.
But it is true, and it's wonderful to have that highlighted.
Oh, yes. This one is called How to Rescue a Grackle. And it is written for a friend of mine whose name is Bliss. When it swoops inside the open door, beats its wings against the window of your room, you must trap it. Hold it with firm hands close to your chest. No matter your heart drums a hummingbird's tattoo, cup the frantic wings gently. Don't squeeze. The creature needs to know panic means the false clarity of glass. Don't think like a captor. This is not your prisoner. The security of your hands is not a cage, but a promise. Walk towards the open sky. Use a lullaby voice. Sing if you must. It's all right to be afraid. You are both afraid. Once you have crossed the threshold, let your hands open like a pair of wings. Wait. There will be a brush of feathers. A flash of iridescent green will catch your eye. Let the wind stroke your hair and face like a lover. Listen. It will whisper all the secret words for flight.
So I take it this was based on a true story?
Yes, I was helping my friend move, and we were moving from the first floor apartment in the building to the second floor apartment. So we had the windows open, and this little grackle kept swooping in through the open door and then getting itself trapped and trying to get out through the glass window. So we had to 3 times
Oh my God.
get this little bird and throw it outside.
Oh.
It's
And they're petrified. They're just, and it's. I've seen very large grackles. So about how big was
No,
it?
it was really small. It
wow.
must have been a fledgling or.
Yeah.
Oh, poor baby.
I lost.
Well, and the funny thing is because that experience could have all been done in a short story. It could have
Yes.
been 8, 10, 12 pages, a little longer, whatever. But the whole essence was caught in.
Yeah.
That's
Just
what I
that
love
moment.
about poetry.
Just that moment.
Yes.
Just the moment, sharing.
And the
the moment.
emotion of that.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
emotion of it is what is that both being scared.
That's
both
yes. I
being
love that.
tentative.
We're both afraid.
I think that crystallizes better in a poem
I
than
think
it did
so
in a
too.
short story.
I think so too.
Right,
Yeah.
because you would have to, in a short story or anything else, you would be distracted by everything else that you'd have to either describe or show.
Right.
If it was a short film or something visual, you would be distracted by the moving boxes and all the other things that would be there as part of the story. And
I think the only other way you could capture something like this would be in a painting, and somewhat an abstract of a painting. You might be able to capture the emotion as it was in that moment.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Do either one of you ever get drawn to paint or draw a poem when you do it?
Yes.
I have
Yeah.
no talent in two-dimensional art.
Okay.
I love the way that in two-dimensional art.
Well, I didn't say it was
Good.
Now stop.
Talent. I said I was drawn to do it.
No self-deprecation here.
I did not bring my very first chapbook for reasons. Because I also thought it'd be a great idea to illustrate my own chapbook.
Was it? You don't think so now?
See, because I've gotten lazy now. I tend to write poetry either when I moved. The one I wrote for Max. You both know Max. I wrote a poem for Max that I read on the show for him. I actually read just taping it into my phone while I was driving through construction because that's when it came to me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm kind of driving and I had get waylaid by construction and I did the That's Max poem.
Rush hour poetry.
Rush hour poetry. But it used to be, I'd have the journal books, and I would do the poetry, and it would all be different colored pens, and there'd be some, I'd make it a work of art just
Wow.
by doing like pens and colors and
So
some-
have either of
Yeah.
you ever done ekphrastic poetry? Do you even know what
Yes.
that is? You
I
do.
don't.
Yes.
I don't.
So ekphrastic, it's a Greek word, and it's basically when you look at a piece of art, and that piece of art brings a poem, and you write a poem, or you give a poem to an artist or a photographer, and they're moved to create a piece of art that matches the poem. And it's not illustrating the poem. It's a way of resonance between two different kinds of art.
I've done that. I didn't know what it was called.
Yes, isn't that,
Yeah.
it's a great word, ekphrastic.
So
Ekphrastic.
the Blackstone Valley Artists Association has a poet artist
Oh,
thing
fun.
every year, and
I've been part of it for the past 2 years, and I love it. So
That
when
sounds amazing.
we do a switch. So we both create a seed piece that we will give to the other. We switch, and then we do a response piece.
Oh, nice.
Oh
And
my goodness.
it's awesome. I love it.
Now, what is that? No, you said it's a festival or
It's the Blackstone Valley Artist Association.
okay.
So in central Massachusetts, it's a group of people in the Blackstone Valley and also Worcester, because
Worcester.
broad-minded. And it goes to a couple. So the Worcester Public Library has a show. We had it in the month of February. The Blackstone Valley Library had it in March. And then the Millbury Barnes and Noble actually had the poems and pieces up for the first week of April.
Oh, cool. I need to contact with you to get part of that.
yes,
That'd be awesome.
yeah, remind me because it's on Facebook, and I'll shoot you an invite.
Nice, nice.
Shoot me an invite too.
All right, yes.
This is awesome. We should create that up here. Make it
That-
happen here too. Yeah,
That-
yeah.
that
Do a
would-
Merrimack Valley version.
Yeah.
That would be great. I did. I was flying on a plane, and you're talking about that made me think of this. I was flying on a plane, and there was this guy, and I was in first class, and this guy's over in first class, and the stewardesses always give you more time when you're in first class. Right? You get more time and attention, and so this guy is. Have been having too much to drink, and he's kind of like sort of hitting on the stewardess, and she's trying to be nice. And the stewardess keeps talking to me because we're having good conversations,
And you're not hitting on her.
and I'm not hitting on her. And if something comes up about writing, or I don't even know what, I was writing a poem, and she saw what I was doing, and she said something, and I said, oh, yeah, I was just writing a piece of poetry. Oh, you write poetry? I said, yeah, blah, blah, blah. And so this guy said, so he's trying to get her attention, well, I write poetry too. And he said, come on. He said, let's do a poetry off. So here we're driving. And I'm like, okay.
Oh my.
Lordy.
So so we set this like 2-minute time limit, 5-minute time limit, something, and said, okay, we're going to write a poem about what's going on, and then we'll share it, and she gets to choose. And she offered her, of course, in first class you get free drinks anyways, but you get a free drink.
Because this guy needed that.
Clearly.
Well, I think it was his suggestion, but whatever. But so I sit down and write a poem called Flight 1492, and it's a serious poem. It's got like 5 or 6 stanzas. I mean, like it does, I do the whole thing. And of course he does a roses are red, violets are blue,
Lordy.
aren't you beautiful, I am too type of poem. I can't remember what it was.
Could have been worse.
It was so
Very limerick.
foolish. Yeah, but it was so foolish and stuff like this. But in that moment, having that boom,
Right. Yes.
and then the stewardess was like, "Can I have the poem? I want a copy of the poem."
Aww. Yes.
That's neat.
That's a great story.
But yeah, so kind of taking that moment of looking at a piece
Right.
of art, looking at that situation, and having that. Okay, right now, can you just produce? And I think poets
what does it
tend to be
move you
really
to?
good at that.
You
Yeah.
can't
Yeah.
say, okay, let's write it. Here's a piece of art. Write a novel, and I'll get back to you with an epic mural the size of Guernica.
I actually do best when I'm given limitations.
Same. Yes.
And so when I have writer's block, which I kind of air quote because I'm not sure it's a thing, it's many, many things, right? But if I'm feeling stuck in my writing and somebody gives me 3 or 4 limitations and says, I want you to write a Shakespearean sonnet about winter that has lollipops in it. I mean, I don't know, whatever. But having those boundaries forces my creativity to unwind in a way that if I just had a blank paper with no boundaries, I would be stuck.
There's something fun
Yeah,
about playing
yeah.
in your, about being not fenced in, but having the freedom
Yeah.
to
Yes.
stay in your.
Absolutely.
Yes.
You can see it. Kids love that. I mean, kids like boundary, and we like it. We're naturally comfortable. It does open something up.
The in a previous relationship I had, he loved my poetry, and so whenever I wrote a poem, he'd always want to hear it. And we had moved across country. We'd moved in with my father to take care of him, so we didn't have to go to a nursing home. There was a lot of different stuff going on. It was really crazy. And we're just laying there one night, and he just looks at me and he said, "You haven't written any poetry in a while."
Huh.
And I don't know whether he thought it would be, whether I was writing it for him or me. It didn't make any difference. And boom, like 40, and he rolls over to read his book, and like 45 minutes later, I'm like, boom, hello, yeah, 5 poems. Boom, 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 boom. All completely different.
It's like unlock a little door.
Yes.
It was just like,
Yeah.
I'm going to push your poetry button.
Yes.
I love that idea. Poetry.
So we're going to see if we can get through one more round. And then
Okay.
we're going to close this down to come up to a part 2.
Yes.
Where we're
right,
going to be
cool.
more about reading and sharing poetry and thoughts and ideas. I'm up again. Vampire. You came in the night, gone by dawn, leaving your wounds with I love you, with a said in but an act of passion, shall I ever know, will you return tomorrow or seek fresh blood? That was 17.
That's-
I believe it.
Yeah.
That one also brings up for me like the emotional vampires in our
Oh,
lives.
Yes.
absolutely.
The
Yes.
people who suck out. You'd rather wish the blood would have been easier.
I say like the predatory feel of that, of
Yes.
someone, of like the one night stand predator
Yes.
almost, and that's
Yeah.
And the way our society conflates
Yeah.
love in that. And
Yes.
Yeah.
It's okay if I say I love you.
Yeah.
Right. That,
That makes-
justifies or proves or shows or
Yep.
magic words.
Using love as manipulation.
and you also wrote this before Twilight.
Yes.
Well, yeah.
I did write this before Twilight. I actually wrote this before I got introduced to Anne Rice.
Oh,
But,
okay.
Yeah, because I was a big Anne Rice fan, but this is even prior to this. My only vampire experience at this point, because I was like 17, was with Barnabas Collins in Dark Shadows.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I was a big Dark Shadows fan. But there was this definite thing. And of course, between 14 and 28 or so, 27, 28, I was very bisexual. And I was very much like, okay, so today's a woman, tomorrow's a man, today's a woman. This is fun. Which do I like best? Back, forth, stuff like this. But as I evolved through that, it was kind of sort of figuring out how men wanted or didn't want to be loved and how women wanted and didn't want to be loved. And kind of finding where was my ground, what was actually my tribe.
Yep.
I've always said that, you know,
Poets.
I've always said that, you know, strict heterosexuality or homosexuality is just a lack of imagination. They're just parts. I can always figure out what to do with them.
Yes.
So I can always find out what to do. You know, it's like, I can always figure out what to do with your parts, but what do I do with your heart?
Well, that goes back to your
Yeah.
first poem, too.
Yeah, but physically.
I like that.
Next one
Next
is...
one.
Okay. All right. So
This seems to be appropriately sort of... This is the
I
title.
Segue. Good segue.
All right, so I guess this is going to switch to the second page too.
Yes,
so I
it
also
will,
write
yes.
super long poems.
You do?
Most of my poems are multiple pages. This one I actually originally wrote inspired by Doctor Who. Then I smoothed it out to be a little bit more than just Time Lords. So Love Song for an Immortal. If you say that you must love me only now. All you have is the present, a ray of sun between the clouds. Empires rise and planets die in the changing of my breath. You're welcome to travel with me, and I will wrestle with your death. But don't ask me for my past, that is mine alone to bear, to cherish, mourn, and sanctify. Ask Cassandra, I was there. Judas, Enkidu, Penelope, Dorothy Gale. I've known and hide the scars of affections slaughtered, lost, and left behind with pieces of my heart. And don't ask me for my future. It's mine to neither know nor give. You can't promise me forever. I know how long you'll live. For I can scan across eternity while you age and turn to dust. Shine brightly now, your glimmer fades, a micron of planetary crust. So if you say that you must love me, travel with me however far, I promise you, I warn you, we both will wear the scars. Don't try to promise me forever. We can't return upon that vow. But I'll share this corner of infinity with you. All that counts is now.
So Doctor Who. So Doctor Who.
It is, and yet I love that we'll both wear the scars, because that's true of any
Relationship.
Any and
All
every.
you have is the now.
Yep.
It's so
And
interesting.
and being in a relationship does feel like a corner of infinity. It does feel like it's got all the past, it's got all the present, it's got all the future, and yet it's got none of them.
Right,
In
yeah.
almost every relationship.
I want a copy of that.
Okay.
I love that.
Thank
That's
you.
great.
Thank you.
I love that it was first inspired by like Doctor Who. I mean, if you hadn't said that, I would never have gone there. And as a Wizard of Oz fan, I love the Dorothy Gale in there. So.
Well, the Doctor, all those references are from prior Doctor Who episodes because he
Which
ran
I
into.
totally got because I'm
Yes,
a
yeah.
major Doctor Who fan.
For all our geeks out there, or Doctor Who fans.
Like
yes.
Ace, his companion, was
Yes.
actually based on Dorothy Gale, and he ran into Enkidu and Gilgamesh,
Yeah.
and I'm like, so I have a lot of fun with that.
And he's so alone, too.
yes.
Yes.
The only one of his kind left.
Yes, and there's a little point there when I heard a little river song. I thought of river song as your
Spoilers!
spoilers. I
Yes.
love it. I love it.
I love
Oh,
her.
thank you.
So we're going to ask TJ. LJ, sorry.
TJ.
Trisha
Trisha is TJ.
I know. The initial brigade.
The initial brigade. We're going to ask LJ to open with the poem for our part 2 show.
All
because
right.
we've run out of time.
No problem.
So
Come back.
next week, come back, and we're going to finish this with the three of us sharing more stories, more poems, with Rona trying to keep us in line. And we will...
It's like herding cats, everybody.
back. In you is a poet's soul. Do something with it. Namaste.